Hello, my name is Cambria and I am a current Biohealth Sciences student at Oregon State University. For today's experiment, I'm going to show you how to crystallize rock candy using the properties of solubility. For this experiment, you are going to need 1 cup of water, 3 cups of sugar, 1 pan, 1 tall glass beaker or cup, and some wooden rods. I used regular cooking skewers. If you want colored rock candy, I would recommend using food coloring, and if you want your candy to be flavored, you can use any type of flavored oil. Make sure you get a parent or guardian's help or permission before starting this experiment, as you will be using a cooking stove. After gathering all of your materials, the first step to completing this experiment is to get your wooden rods a little bit wet so the sugar will stick. Roll them in sugar and set them out to dry while you're completing the rest of the experiment. I recommend doing 2 or 3 rods at a time. Next, combine 1 cup of water with 3 cups of sugar in a medium-sized saucepan. Put this pan over medium heat and stir occasionally until the mixture starts to boil. Make sure that there are no sugar granules left and you have a liquid consistency. At this point, you can add any food coloring or flavoring that you like. I added pink food coloring and cherry flavoring. Carefully pour the contents of the pan into a tall glass beaker or cup. Be careful with this step as you are dealing with hot liquids. Now that the wooden skewer coated with sugar is dry, suspend it so that the sugar-coated wooden rod is submerged in the syrup mixture from the pan. Make sure that the skewer is not touching the sides or the bottom of the glass. I used clips to do this, but you could also use rubber bands or tied string to suspend the rod in the syrup solution. After waiting for a couple of hours, you will see the crystals start to form. You can leave it to develop crystals for a few days in order to get bigger crystals and more candy, or you can take it out at the end of the day and eat your candy even sooner. While you're waiting for the candy to crystallize, let me tell you a little bit about the science that's going on in your glass. So what even is crystallization? Crystallization occurs when a liquid solute changes form and becomes a solid crystal. This process is dependent on solubility. Solubility describes how well one substance called the solute can dissolve into another substance called the solvent. In the case of this experiment, we are dissolving sugar into water, so the solute would be the sugar and the solvent would be the water. Different solutes are better than others depending on their chemical properties like pH, temperature, and pressure. Most of the time, the solubility of the solute increases when you increase the temperature of the solvent, meaning that more of the substance can be dissolved at the higher temperatures. When we first added the sugar into the water, the solubility wasn't high enough to completely dissolve the sugar in the water. This is why we had to heat up the sugar and water in order to dissolve them together completely. As the temperature of the solvent or the water rises, so does the solubility of the sugar, which is also being described as the solute. Because we're dissolving more sugar in the water than would be possible at room temperature, we are creating what's called a supersaturated solution. A supersaturated solution has more of the dissolved solute than could be dissolved by the solvent during normal conditions like room temperature. Other supersaturated solutions are used in the food industry to make soda and other carbonated beverages. As the temperature in the glass cools down after we took the pan off of the heat, the solubility of the solution decreases and the sugar starts to form back into a solid crystal. As the solution continues to cool down, it releases even more sugar solute that becomes a solid. Because of the properties of the sugar, it would rather stick to itself than form a new crystal. This is why we coated the wooden rod with sugar in the beginning of the experiment, so that the sugar being released from the solution attaches to itself on the wooden rod. The sugar keeps attaching to itself on the wooden rod and the crystal becomes even larger. This process is called crystallization. After the rods have been sitting for a few days, this is how they should look as an end result. Thank you for joining me in this experiment on how to form rock crystals using crystallization techniques. I hope you enjoy your candy!